We gather here in memory of 20 beautiful children and 6 remarkable adults. They lost their lives in a school that could have been any school, in a quiet town full of good and decent people that could be any town in America.
This was Thursday, September 14th. I was in the main corridor. This is just prior to 7:30 in the morning. Students were coming in. I was greeting students as we do on a regular daily basis. And Matt Mino, one of my associate principals, called me on the radio and said that he needed to see me in the office right away. So it's 10 seconds down the hall, and I got here and I met Matt in the office. He told me that a student, and he mentioned the student's name, had just come to him saying that there were a couple of students who had given him information about planning to carry out an attack on the school, and that the students who had talked to him had used the words a Columbine attack.
Basically, he came forward and he said, you know, I was talking to Sean yesterday at lunch, and Sean was talking to me how he was talking about a Columbine-style attack and how he was going to come into school and get to a point where he was going to die by police gunfire.
I went and I talked to Mr. Mino. Had I known him before? A little bit, you know. He was the principal, he was a nice guy. I never really talked to him that much, and I told him what had happened, and immediately they were pulling out of class.
I sent Matt to get one of them, I went to get the other one, and fortunately both of them were in their classrooms. The bell had not rung. We brought them down here to my office, and right away I separated them, put one boy in Matt's office and kept one in here, and we started talking to them. At the same time, we had alerted the police department. We had alerted our school resource officers, made the call for them. They were here within minutes as well.
I received a phone call from our investigative division, and they had gotten some information from a student that there was what they did refer to as a Columbine-like incident occurring that was prevented.
I probably would not have been one of the ones that was shot, because he told me that if he was going to go through this, I'd be having a call in the morning not to show up. And that's what kind of scared me, because he also said that he was not coming, you know, 4th hour.
And then when it absolutely hit home is obviously when you go into the person's house and you find these weapons, and you find drawings, and you find napalm, homemade napalm, things like that. It becomes really real then, that's for sure.
Green Bay East High School. An extensive plot to attack the school is uncovered and stopped.
I got home and I'd seen it on the news, and when I saw like the pictures of like the guns and everything, you know, I was like, wow, you know, I was pretty shocked.
When I saw the news story that evening at 5 o'clock, it was really overwhelming. It was really scary to see the boxes of weapons.
It was around the whole school. Everyone, you'd hear rumors or you hear details.
That's all we talked about that whole day, was what could have happened, what would have happened. We would have been, you know, like who would have been targeted, and then some people were talking about a list that they had. Everybody was scared.
Definitely shock. I mean, you don't really expect that to happen in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I mean, knowing for the Packers, that's about it.
First, it was just kind of a shocker, and it was just like, why would this happen here, and who's really hates this school so much that they would plan something like this.
When I learned about my friend's involvement in it, I was kind of shocked, you know. He never really showed the signs of, you know, being a troubled youth.
The scariest thing is that this is probably the, you know, best place for someone to take an attack out. It's the most precious and valuable commodity in this whole nation is our kids.
Pre-trial hearings today for the 3 teens accused of plotting to attack Green Bay East High School was held. William Cornell, Sean Sturtz, and Bradley Netwall are set to go on trial together next month.
Here, there were plans of going into school and doing horrific damage. In today's day and age, you have to be careful about what you say and what you think. We're not the thought police. You can't go out and prosecute somebody for thinking something terrible or thinking something stupid or talking tough, or talking about a crime, doing something foolish. But as soon as somebody does something in furtherance of that, then it's more than just talk. You're talking about robbing an establishment. You're talking about attacking a school. It's troublesome. It's not necessarily a crime that you can prosecute, but once you start doing something and taking it beyond just the talk stage, and whether it's making homemade bombs or sawing off weapons to conceal them, now we have a crime.
First of all, the conversations about this possible act of violence were much more vague than everybody thinks. Again, we have those so-called confessions, but those are written by the police. You have to remember that, and that's pretty much in every criminal case. Those confessions are written by the police, and then a detainee is asked, or in Sean's case, told to sign it, okay? So the conversations, we'll never know what kind of conversations these were, but I really don't think that these conversations went into much detail, as the officers would like to believe, about how they were going to, commit violence at the school. They were never talking about blowing up the school.
The allegation that there was a cache of weapons was untrue. There were some inept 16-year-old attempts to make what could have been termed a firecracker out of a toilet paper tube with some gunpowder in it that was used to stuff shells. The family were avid hunters, and they used to buy gunpowder and empty shotgun shells and pellets to stuff them, and they had a machine in the basement where they would make their own bullets, their own shotgun shells. There were the quote-unquote napalm. I think that fed to it. That word napalm. There was no napalm here. There was a jar of gasoline with some styrofoam in it. Another, again, an inept 17-year-old's idea of what could be cool.
When I heard the news, ironically, it wasn't much larger to me. Maybe because I knew one of the students, and I really felt like it was blown out of proportion.
When you say, well, what happened here that didn't happen at Columbine, one of the major factors, was that someone was brave enough to tell an adult that something was up and something was being planned.
We gather this afternoon for good and just purposes. At the same time, we concede that we typically don't have press conferences of this nature. We are here to introduce 2 very important people that were instrumental in how the situation at East High School was handled. I'm extremely proud of these 2 individuals, as well as all the people at East High School that saw to a peaceful resolve of what we now know as an alarming situation.
I can't put into words how proud we are as an East family to have someone to represent our school as well as he had done so.
As you know, I am the one who informed the authorities about the incident at East High School. I did not hear about this until the day before I reported it. I went home, and after some long thought and good parenting, I decided it was my duty to inform the authorities about what I had heard. I did not do it for fame. I did it because I felt I had fear for the life of my fellow students and the staff at East High School. East High School is a historic building, and I felt that if this plan had gone through, it would have been a horrific tragedy. I thought to myself, what's going to happen? Is this really happening? And, what do I do? I struggled with myself because there was one time one part of myself that said, well, this can't be happening. This isn't true. This is not happening. I'm not going to do this. But again, I opened my wallet, I saw the pictures of my friends, and just turned on my computer and just seeing different pictures of my friends. And I said, I have to do this. It doesn't matter what happens. If they come after me, fine. If they don't get caught and if I end up getting killed, fine. But at least, I saved my friends' lives.
High School has a tradition unlike no other school in Wisconsin. You know, being one of the first high schools in the United States is an honor.
First of all, East has a wonderful history and tradition. It kind of relates more to sports than anything else. But as you know, the Packers used to play here behind East High School from 1925 to 1956. Some great athletes have come through here, one being Curly Lambeau, who actually coached East High and the Green Bay Packers at the same time. Jim Crawley, who was one of the 4 horsemen at Notre Dame, is a graduate of East High School. Jim Crawley went on to coach Vince Lombardi at Fordham University, which is stories you really can't make up.
For 32 years, the Packers played here. They won 6 world championships.
And there's a wonderful connection between East and the Green Bay Packers.
Kids need to understand that East High School produces winners. And they're going to be a winner just by graduating from East High School, and I hope they understand that.
Sarah Vandenberg, medallion and 4.0.
Came back to East High School where I graduated from, my mom graduated from, and my grandfather did in 1929. So it's kind of a family tradition as we're going through.
My mother went here, her sisters went here, her father went here, his father went here. I'm an institution.
I've been here, starting my 23rd year as a staff member of East High School, and I love the school to death. Students, staff, families are second to none. And I think the resiliency and the spirit that has been here has definitely risen to the top and helped us get through a really, really difficult situation.
I was hired here about 6 years ago, and I would tell people in the community that I was hired here, they would kind of roll their eyes or give me that look, oh, you're going to work at East, okay, kind of as if to say, oh, that's kind of a bad school. And so it kind of made my wife a little worried, because people in this area seem to call East inner city school, where I think people in major metropolitan areas would kind of laugh at that we're nowhere near an inner city school.
Kind of hurts me because when I go like outside of town or something, they ask me, where do you go to school? I say, Green Bay East. Oh, have you seen anybody get killed?
I think East has gotten a horrible reputation. The other schools in the area have their faults too, but yet we have the newscasts swarming our school. We have the police here.
I didn't like how the newscasters portrayed East as a negative school.
I have some friends that live way out in Missouri, down by St. Louis. They heard about it. Some friends in Seattle, they heard about it. They're like, oh, are you okay? Nothing happened. There was no attack. It was just planned. And we averted it.
I read also in the information provided by the school district that East High, somehow this was a reflection on East High School. Well, there's nothing about this situation which is a reflection on East High School. East High School, as we've seen, had graduates over the years that have gone on to do wonderful things, and that will continue to be the case. And the fact that this happened at East High School doesn't have anything to do with East High School. It really has to do with the time and the age that we live in, and the pressure on young people and their reaction to the abilities to handle that pressure. This could have happened at any high school at any time.
The criminal justice process is very cold. Yes, and it just hangs there. And it's very unfortunate, but it's innocence lost. These 3 young men are really being put through the system. And the system is not friendly. No matter which way you look at it, it can't be.
One of 3 teenagers charged with planning a Columbine-style attack on Green Bay's East High School.
The attack would have looked like the Columbine tragedy in Colorado.
Labeling this as a Columbine like matter or Columbine-style matter, I think was irresponsible and remains irresponsible. It wasn't. It was completely different. They had absolutely no similarities, and there was nothing like it. And what concerns me about doing that, from a legal perspective, of course, our only remedy is to change the venue, that is where the trial will be tried. How can anybody think clearly, because here they have this case and they're bringing back those images of Colorado, what was it, 6, 7, 8 years ago?
Many people mistakenly believe that Columbine High School was the worst act of violence in American K-12 school. We've had, unfortunately, worse. 1958, a 4th grader murdered 95 nuns and students in an elementary school in Chicago, a Catholic elementary school. Then we had Bath, Michigan, a school board member used explosives to kill over 40 people in 1927. And violence is not even a leading cause of death in American schools.
I think this case probably raises more questions than answers. But for example, the kids that were going to East High School that year, they spent the school year thinking that they had a near-miss attack, and I don't think that's true. Was something going to happen? Was there going to be a school shooting at East High School? I think it's possible. I think all the parties agreed that it was possible, but that we don't know for sure. And I think the media played a large part in making the community and the kids at East High School think that we had, we just missed this huge catastrophe, and that could not be further from the truth.
The kids themselves talked about Columbine. Those were words that they used. They became infatuated with it. They looked up things on the internet. So that was going to be part of the case to begin with. I think the fact that these cases have taken place in other parts of the country shows that this can be very real. It's not just fantasy land, that we've seen some horrific tragedies and that these are possibilities, that kids kill, that these things can happen.
Because it'd be kind of interesting just to blow the whole place up. I said, what do you mean? I said, like, what do you mean? He goes, well, yeah, I've been depressed lately. She broke up with me. There's nothing else to lose. I just kind of looked at I was getting kind of scared but confused, all at the same time. Like, is this really real or is he just messing with me?
Yeah, I was just gonna walk in. I was either gonna shoot some people, like 1 or 2, and then kill myself, or I was just gonna kill myself.
I definitely think that video games and just the whole media put together plays a big role on, kids our age, because, like I said before, different people don't feel accepted, so they feel that they have to go to a certain lifestyle to be accepted and respected.
The advertisers, they need to get the headlines, and so you can listen to the stock market report, or you can listen to the drought in Rhodesia, or you can hear about your local school was almost bombed and shot up. People are going to stop what they're doing and go watch that, and it drives up their ratings.
Our constant exposure to guns and violence, I think it's having an impact on some people.
Violence has been around forever. I mean, pinpointing it at video games, music, and all that is just a way to kind of sidetrack from what the real problem is.
I don't understand why they're creating so many killing games anyway. What's the point of it? Why, if it's such a big deal now that we're committing crimes and killing so many people, why are these older people, these adults, creating the games for us kids?
I definitely think that violence is due to the media, because once one person hears about it, then they think that's an option for them. And the video games too, they're graphic, so people get the ideas in their head.
Last week at a Homeland Security workshop, there was a presentation about a game, a Columbine game that's on the internet, that the site apparently is so busy that they have had to provide alternate ways to get into the site. There is a fascination out there with school violence, and in particular with Columbine. And I don't think it's a healthy thing. I don't think it's a good thing.
Playing video games is quite normal. In fact, Cho at Virginia Tech was singled out by his peers as being unusual and strange because he did not play video games with other people. Video games is largely a social activity for boys. And we're talking primarily about boys when we talk about school violence. Of the 101 murders that have taken place at school over the last 10 years or so, only 4 of those have been by girls. This is a male activity. So when we look at males playing video games, it tends to be a bonding activity. They do it with other people. So it's not the video games per se that's the problem. It's when this becomes an isolating activity. You do it by yourself late at night. It's a way of separating yourself from others. This kind of social isolation and extreme introversion are two of the qualities that tend to put kids more at risk.
Obviously, the events that have occurred in our country this week, in particular in Virginia, has all of us, again, very mindful of the need for safety and security in schools, because the tragedy that has unfolded there is just, it's very difficult to comprehend and to understand.
One thing that we've definitely found is that there's no profile. These students varied. It's not a type of, after Columbine, a lot of people tend to overly focus on students who wore trench coats. That doesn't matter. These students range in age, they're academically diverse, they're socially diverse, so unfortunately there's no easy set of demographic characteristics or traits to look for.
Yeah, one of the students I had in class, and I could probably pick out 500 kids over the years that I know that are more dangerous than that kid, to my way of thinking. I mean, I said hello to him every single day. Hello, Mr. Fisk. Good morning, Mr. Fisk. How are you, Mr. Fisk? I mean, I would, if you would say, that kid's a threat, I would say, no way. So yeah, that was a shock to me. So they're out there, and you don't always know what happens in someone's mind. I mean, there is no prototypical, this kid is a dangerous kid.
I didn't know him personally, but I've seen him all the time, like either walking down the street or walking in a hallway or just anywhere. Like, they didn't seem like the type of people that would do it though. Like, you can't really stereotype people that way. Like, I never really looked at anybody, oh yeah, you did that, you're gonna do this. But they didn't seem like the type of people that could do it.
Really after elementary school, I didn't really talk to them much, and I always saw them as like pretty nice kids, just quiet, but it was shocking, but it's not like I suspected anything. I mean, it came as a shock to all of us.
Looking back at some conversation, I thought it was a cry for help, because 2 days prior to that incident, one of the gentlemen, he was in my class, and he had all this stuff written on his hands, rage, anger. And I just came up, I said, what is going on with all this stuff on your hand? He said, oh, I was bored. I said, come on, you shouldn't be doing that just for being bored, and I told him, go wash it off. And he got up, he washed it off, and we kind of just laughed and moved on with class. So then now I think back, okay, was this, a big sign for me to say, what's going on?
And this is a pattern if you look at, Columbine, if you look at any of the school shootings, there's not necessarily a profile for any one of them, but you see the diaries, you see the conversations, the dialogues prior to the actual happenings, and they get wrapped up into something.
And I don't think a person just on a single day just all of a sudden goes off. This is something that continuously builds, and it's not something that's building in just one place either. It's not just the school or just the home, it's a culmination of things, and that goes back to what we were saying about the whole community needing to be involved and so forth.
It amazes me that 2 high schoolers could get that much gun power. Another thing that went through my head was, where were the parents? I was thinking, wow, how do these kids get all of these stuff in their house? Like, all these things they're naming that they're bringing out of this house, I'm like, is that even possible where teenage boys in high school can do that? It's just amazing.
I was surprised that much could be found in a house without the parent knowing. That's what I was surprised at. It wouldn't surprise me if they had it stashed somewhere and, out of the way. That did surprise me, though.
My name is Bernard Cornell. I am Billy's dad.
The family, the mother and the father, the brothers and the sister are just remarkable people. I've met with them a number of times, and I remember, again, someone irresponsibly tried to associate everything with a profile. Where were the parents? Some authority figure made at a press conference. I'll tell you what, the parents were there. The parents are good people. The parents, that family is the kind of family you would want as a neighbor.
His dad did have an assault rifle license to, have that many weapons that they found. They were all legal. And he had them in a locked gun cabinet, everything, I've gone through hunter safety, I know gun safety. His dad followed him to a T just because, simple fact is, what could happen. And there's serious repercussions for firearms possession and not doing it to a T. And from what I understand is, Billy broke the gun cabinet lock to compromise everything.
We test firing evidence exhibit number 40-112.
And you've got weapons. You've got modifications of weapons that can kill. And talk about using those weapons and talking about what you do once you got inside the school. And the idea that you were very close to seeing that this could have happened if at least 2 of these kids had had a bad day on the same day.
Conspiracy is not a crime that's charged very often in a case where the crime in question didn't actually happen. So that was the first major legal question, and I filed a pretty large motion trying to get the case dismissed just on the fact, the idea that you can't charge a conspiracy crime, basically charging someone for just thinking about something when they didn't really take any real action towards the commission of the crime.
There would be elements the state would have to prove that you intended to commit first-degree intentional homicide, that you were a member of a conspiracy to do that, and that one or more of the conspirators performed acts toward the commission of that intended crime. Do you understand that those are separate elements that the state would have to prove?
So that if you and I conspire to rob a bank and we really mean it and we shake hands on it and say we're going to agree to rob that bank together, and then you perhaps go out and purchase a gun, or I case the place out or steal the keys to get into the bank, that crime has been committed. Even if we next meet and say, this is crazy, we're not going to do this, throw the keys away and never mention it again, the crime has still been committed and a punishment can still be meted out for it. So it's very interesting, and that was dealt with pre-trial, because as you know, in this case, there was abundant evidence that as these kids matured from 15, 16 into 17, there was abundant evidence that no one was going to do this and no one wanted to do this.
Sean, what was his idea? Yesterday, was he trying to pull you back in? Yes. He wanted the 2 of you to go and do it tomorrow? Yeah. Or yesterday? Yes. Did he mention when he would do it? No. He just said, come on, let's go. Let's do it? Yeah. We got the stuff, we got the plan, let's do it? Yeah.
This is why this case is more than just kids talking, kids screwing around, or something that wasn't serious. Not only did they think and talk about something which is almost incomprehensible, but then Billy Cornell put all of this stuff together. The 2 sawed-off weapons, the banana clips, the pistol, and basically a ready-to-go grab bag arsenal in his own room. Conspiracy has to be punished to avoid putting people in a position where even one little incident can trigger an attempt and a completed crime.
Secret Service, as you know, we protect president, public figures, the vice president, all of our protectees we've learned something from. We conducted a study about people who would want to attack or harm them. And from that study, we came up with the term of targeted violence. And that can be applied to school violence as well. Certain types of school violence fit the definition of targeted violence, which the school is specifically selected as the location of the attack. So because we had this knowledge base of targeted violence, we partnered with the Department of Education and tried to apply what we had learned, targeted violence directed at our nation's protectees, to what was going on in the schools. We had 2 key questions that we wanted to answer. We wanted to know, were these attacks planned? And most importantly, with the Secret Service, we always have a mission of prevention. Could they be prevented? And what we found is that it's often different people who are involved in the student's life who might hold pieces of the puzzle. And it's through those people, if they can work together and share the information, you can share, if you will, your pieces of the puzzle and get a more complete picture of what's going on with that student and in that student's life, and possibly detect if they appear to be on a pathway of action. What you can look for are students who are kind of undergoing attack-related behaviors, who maybe, we found a case of students who obtained the diagrams, the fire escape diagrams on the back of doors so that they could better draw a diagram of the school. Students who are attempting to obtain weapons, definitely weapons acquisition is a big thing. And communications, because we found so many of these students communicate their intentions prior to the acts. What have their friends noticed about them? Are friends or others around them concerned that they seem to be experiencing a change or maybe giving away valued possessions? Talk to others around them.
Students are a piece. Statistically, most students who carry a gun to school never tell anyone else they have it, and they don't show it to anybody. So relying on students as our primary means to find, for example, guns that come to school is a very serious mistake. At the same time, as we saw with the East High, many times the information we get from a student concerning something like a weapon is the most important. In other words, it's bad when a kid's carrying a gun in their book bag to school, but it's far worse when a student is making very detailed plans to use a weapon. So it's a piece. It's a very important piece. I do think some people rely on it too much. That's why we talked about other ways to find, what's going on in our school besides, just relying on student tips and so forth. It's a very valuable piece, but it's like anything we started with. Security cameras, I think, are wonderful if they're used in context, and we don't just say we're going to slap cameras everywhere and that's going to solve our problem. When used in concert with some of these other things, it's very valuable.
I would never suggest to anybody, whether it be at Weston or any other school across the country that has experienced a tragedy, that we are, it didn't happen here because we're so great. That's not the point. It didn't happen here because certain things went right. We also realized that had the young man who came forward not come to school that day, had he gotten ill, had not come to school, had people he was comfortable with not been available, that this still could have happened here. We're not smug about it in any way, shape, or form. It was real. It could have happened. It was very, very close to happening.
It almost seems like a regular occurrence now whenever it becomes April 20th, 4/20, the Columbine anniversary. I guess the way I would characterize it is, in this day and age of global 24-hour news, which also almost always borders on the negative or the disastrous or the sensational, some kids, believe it or not, look to think they're going to get a day off by calling in bomb threats or scribing on bathroom stalls certain information.
In the bathroom stall, there was a bomb threat that was found for 4/20, which is the anniversary of Columbine, Hitler's birthday. Also, it's known for partying and drug use.
And what I'd like to talk about right now is what we intend to do tomorrow night, Thursday night. Once we clear the school, once we clear all the students and staff and people who are working in the school out, we intend to do a complete top-to-bottom inspection of the school. Essentially every nook and cranny. We're going to open every locker in the school. We are going to check every classroom, every place where anything could possibly be put that shouldn't be here. Do you have a plan for if there's a terrorist attack? We used to hear those about, does your family have a plan if there's a fire? Does your family have a plan if there's a tornado, a flood? And now we're talking about, does your family have a plan if this kind of a disaster occurs?
What happened today was that I initiated a timed district-wide level 3 lockdown drill. What that is level 3 is, first of all, where every classroom and every room that's occupied is, the doors are shut, the lights are off, and there's no talking, no one is visible. You want to make it seem like the building is empty. Okay, that's a level 3 lockdown. The reason we did a timed level 3 lockdown drill was in response to a couple of things. First of all, the Virginia Tech incident. We wanted to see how fast can you lock down 20,000 students and in 40 different sites.
We've just been notified that there's been a lockdown. We'd like you to please move to the corner of the room. Move to no talking, make sure that all your personal items with you. No talking during the lockdown. No talking during the lockdown.
I'm in on first floor with Rod, Josie, and Shivani again. Second floor, I don't know where Janie's at.
Matt and Ginny, just let me know when you've got the, your areas covered, and I'll let downtown know. This then ends the lockdown drill.
The case, when it came about at first, I think there was this perception that this was a very imminent plot. These kids were going to storm the school the next day, and they were going to throw these bombs in through school and start shooting. What we found is that about 2 years earlier, Billy Cornell had an idea of going into school. He had an infatuation with Columbine. He was good friends with Sean Sturtz. Sturtz and him started looking up Columbine on the internet, seeing what was done, seeing what kind of weapons they used. There was an identification with Klebold and Harris. Certainly Sturtz had some students picking on him. Billy Cornell had an infatuation with guns and explosives, and he was very intelligent enough to read about things on the internet. He put some things together. And then sometime in the spring of their junior year, Brad Netwall, who at that point was a senior, was going through some tough times at school. The three of them hung around at lunch almost every day, and they started talking more about this plan. And as Netwall's statement said, well, it kind of started out as joking, but it became more serious. And he acknowledges at some point it became more serious. And they talked about going in with guns, then they added bombs. They were going to use pipe bombs. Netwall says he never really wanted anybody to get killed, so he suggested a drive-by shooting. They talked about ski masks. They talked about all different types of things of carrying out an incident at East High School. They talked about doing it at some other public place, a library or a bank, because they wanted the attention, and there was talk of suicide by cop, at least as to Sturtz and Cornell.
A tragedy didn't happen in the sense of people coming in, killing kids, harming kids, blowing up the school. That tragedy didn't happen. Something definitely did happen. It was like a huge bucket of ice water thrown in our face. To use a trite phrase, a wake-up call. This can happen, this could happen. This was an inch away from happening here at East High School. And I think people reacted to that in different ways. I think some people wanted to put it aside. They dealt very well with the issue as it was there and said, and some people very upfront saying, it didn't happen, it's over, let's move on. For other people, the examination, the reflection continues to this day, will continue through the trials into next year beyond.
From the perspective of having been a parent and being a grandparent now, I want my schools to be safe. I don't want young people thinking they can do something like this or put other children at risk. So I have a very strong feeling of we need to deliver consequences to these children. On the other hand, I do know that when you take a adolescent and you put them in jail, especially if you put them in a jail with adults, the long-term outcome is usually pretty poor. They don't do very well. They learn more varied kinds of adult criminal behavior when they get incarcerated. So in many respects, it's not in our best interest in the community to be punitive through the correctional system. But it depends. I know young people that really need mental health care, and if you deliver that in a skillful, intense way, they're going to do a lot better. I also know young people that you might as well just put them in jail because they are not going to get a thing from what you offer them in terms of mental health. This is not a mental health problem. This is a character problem, and what they need are consequences for their behavior.
Please rise. Board is again in session. Be seated.
I know this case has affected the community in many ways, especially Green Bay East. I would like to apologize to Green Bay East High School. I know the parents, students, and staff were greatly affected and put through an unnecessary amount of fear and anxiety for their safety. It was undeserved and unprovoked.
All right. Mr. Sturts, do you have something you want to tell this court?
I do, Your Honor. I just want to say that I am sorry for all the trouble that's been caused to the state and the community throughout this whole ordeal for the last year. And as to this plan that supposedly was going to happen, William himself states that he knows I could not go through with it. And you would hear the same from everyone that knows me well.
I think the truth should be spoken from this courtroom in this sentence. And I think at this court, there's no question that shotgun and that assault rifle are troubling. There's no question about that. But we know there's no grudge with that school. We know there's no long-term bullying. We know there's none of the classic profile of whatever these kids are that do this. I would submit this, Your Honor. If the court is considering a prison term, that it be enough to take him out of his adolescence. He's already sat a year hard time. Have enough to take him out of his adolescence. 2, 3 years. So that when he's 20, he's 19, 20, 21. He comes back, high school is a distant, distant memory.
I want to say that I'm very sorry for what has happened. And I believe nothing would have happened. I'm very sorry for what has happened and the people who've been affected by it. No, I'm sorry.
Since the East crisis, a lot has changed in the district, particularly the aftermath, the debriefing. That's so critical when you have an incident like this, to pay attention to what you did right, what you could have done better. So that's something that we really are paying attention to now. We've initiated at every building, all the doors are locked all the time. That's something new. It's basically a level 1 lockdown where no one comes in or out unless they're allowed in or out by a monitor or a security camera with a buzzer into the office. So that's a pretty big thing we initiated. We've asked the buildings to increase the number of lockdown drills that they do from 2 to 3, and we'll probably move that up a little bit more over the coming years.
I believe that we have a system in place for armed intruder that would best protect the majority of students and staff. They're to lock their doors. This is the hard thing we couldn't get for the staff to realize, though. Whoever's out in the hallway going to the restroom, try to tell a teacher, don't go get them. Just shut your door. They don't like that. But that's the protocol. And we have a response to an armed intruder. We no longer wait outside. Columbine taught us that. But we attack the threat. And we suffocate the threat.
Well, the security is definitely more tight. I mean, all the doors are locked at all times. So, I mean, we used to be able to enter pretty much any door we wanted before school, and now only the main doors are open. So, you know, you kind of see everyone, I mean, whenever it enters the doors, you kind of sift through to make sure that you're not really a suspect. And, you know, you can just kind of feel that everything's gotten a little tighter.
I think really what the administration is doing is just really trying to make sure teachers are better aware of what they need to do. We have fire drills, we do tornado drills, we do lockdown drills, but we don't do those on a daily basis, and we still don't, but they do want us to be definitely more aware. What would you do? Really think about what you would do if an emergency situation arose.
Well, I know this year they've had, the teachers always stand out in the hallways in between classes, which is kind of nice because even if it is there for safety, it's nice just to say hi to them and, I mean, converse while you're during passing time.
Has anything changed? As far as my teaching practices, yes and no. Yes and no. At the very beginning, I was really reading into everything the students are saying, and it just became too tense. I wasn't myself. Any little thing the students would do, I would say, oh, is that something I should be thinking about? Is this gonna really turn out to be something else? But, as the year went on, I just got back to my practices. From the get-go, I always try to build, a meaningful relationship with students, just getting to know them outside of teaching algebra.
Teachers have a very difficult job now. There are contradictory forces at work in the communities that are all kind of coming together in the schools. On the one hand, we are expecting our schools to do more training about socialization, social skills, monitoring the mental health of children. There's a lot of emphasis on doing mental health screenings so we can reduce teenage suicide rates. Now there's pressure on teachers to identify the one student out of 10,000 who might be lethally dangerous. At the same time, we have a lot of parents who do not want the teachers to be acting in that kind of role, who feel that this is a violation of their privacy and their parental responsibility and rights to determine the kind of emotional life of their teenager and monitor that. They don't want the schools doing that. Furthermore, teachers are expected to get their students to perform academically, and they've got enough to worry about without having to worry about the student's emotional state. Furthermore, school budgets make it difficult to hire enough guidance counselors and provide enough of that kind of support as well. So we are really asking our teachers to perform an impossible job.
Some people think that the steps that we are looking at taking are overboard. Locking the doors, limiting the access. One of the latest things that we're talking about now is having students wear ID cards so that we can readily identify kids. Some of my young friends are saying that, well, that's just going to be like a prison then. Well, so be it, but those are some precautions we can take that are going to help us at least identify the kids, know who the kids are when they are here. But again, it's going to be a judgment call. People are going to say it's way too restrictive, and I'm sure there are those who are going to say it's not restrictive enough.
I do like the idea that they're making the kids wear the ID cards around their necks, but I know it's a hassle for students and they probably won't support that. I mean, it would be kind of annoying, but it's just another safety measure just to kind of have that safety blanket just in case.
There are some schools that are really going overboard in trying to encourage, or at least talking about having teachers be armed. I mean, all sorts of options are being put forward, which is understandable because we don't want our kids to get hurt at school. Nobody does. We want the schools to be a safe place. It's interesting, though, because the primary mental health problem among junior high and high school students now is anxiety. And our surveys show that in schools where you have metal detectors and cameras and a lot of law enforcement presence, kids are more scared. They're more nervous. So in some respects, it's the adults trying to help the kids be safe that are adding to the problem of having the kids be more frightened.
A lot of things change. Like me and my friends were always cautious about anywhere we go, even if it is in school or out of school. We always watch each other, make sure we're all right or whatever.
I wouldn't change anything. I really wouldn't. I mean, I think we have the best security system you could have is having 4,000 eyes out there just to kind of keep an eye on each other, just to see what's going on.
I believe there's an entire student body of Matt Atkinsons out there. They just haven't run into the situation. Are they going to tell on their friend because they heard somebody stole a candy bar from the local store? No. But when it comes to an event like this, I think they're going to come forward because of those relationships, because of the trust they have. But it's imperative that we continue to develop that culture and the relationships with the parents, because let's not forget, it's not just the school and the police job. It's that family unit. And whether that family includes a father, mine didn't, But I knew darn well if someone was going to get hurt, I was going to say something. Or just a single parent. They have to keep those relationships, those dialogues, those communications open with their kids. And they'll come forward.
We have decided in this district and in most districts that we aren't going to inspect every package that comes in. We're not going to inspect kids' backpacks. We're not going to set metal detectors up at doors.
You can make it a fortress. But Dylan Klebold, in Columbine, there were cameras all over there. There was actually an armed security guard on that campus. That's not going to stop it. The Weston shooting, he walked into school. You could have a metal detector. You could have a person taking your name at a desk. What's going to happen to her when he walks in? If he is hell-bent on creating a shooting in that school, it's going to happen.
My take on school shootings has several points. The first point is, even though it's terrifying to a community, what we've found is that schools are generally a safe place, and I want to put that in as a caveat, and that school shootings are highly visible and get a lot of publicity, and they're a wake-up call to the community. We've got to take a look at several things. Number one, what are the at-risk children that our educators are working with? How are they identified? And how can we identify them before something happens, such as a Columbine or an almost school shooting in Green Bay? That so often, and the Secret Service report confirms this, bullying is a key factor in terms of school shootings today. And the perpetrator, often, of these suicide, homicide rampages are themselves usually a victim of bullying.
The school's going to have to look at restructuring how high school looks too. I mean, we're in the same structure of a day that we've had since the rural times of the 1860s. We have 8-period day, 51 minutes. This has been the same stuff happening for over 100 years. We have to look at new ways that are going to hit our kids. And I think those are also components that we have to look at, and those things will also help with building relationships with students.
But you want somehow students and teachers to be able to work together. You want students to look out for their peers, the safety of everyone. You do not want people to stand by for bullying behavior when that's happening. You want kids who have mental health issues to be able to ask for help and be able to get it because it's available in the community. I think all of these things together are the best approach to prevent violence in the future.
One of the things that I believe is hard for many of us as parents to accept is that we cannot, in schools we cannot, the police cannot, nobody can guarantee with 100% certitude that somebody is not going to do something to harm someone else. We just can't do it. As I'm walking in the building today and I'm thinking about the measures that we're looking at employing with having quasi-security guards at the doors in the future, the way we've gone to locking the buildings down, trying to control access, even that's not 100% assured. We have a lot of kids who need to come in early. They have band lessons in the morning. We have kids all through the building at all hours for athletic events, for musical events. And there's no way short of having only one entrance, one exit, and having it totally staffed that I could come even close to 100% certainty that nothing bad is going to come into the building.
And to what extent do we give up our civil rights? To what extent do we give up our freedom for the pursuit of this quote-unquote security from an aberrant individual out of every million or two?
First of all, let's emphasize that school shootings and school violence is still very rare, but of course it's reported on all the time, and you know, incidents like what happened at Virginia Tech are still very rare, thankfully. But of course it makes people very afraid, and I think that's the problem now, is that we're living in a culture of fear, and the schools are living in a culture of fear.
If we allow our fears to sweep us away so that all of a sudden Green Bay and East High School become a dangerous place, that we need more bars on the windows and more metal detectors at the door and more guards in the hallway, then I think we end up building more barriers. We end up creating a world where children are more afraid, where people spend less time communicating, where social connections become more risky. And I think ultimately that is the direction that we don't want to go.
School shootings are only a manifestation of what our children are exposed to through the media, through the internet, through violent models, and through access to guns. And we need to protect them. And we need to instill safeguards so that our children don't feel like they have lost this assumptive world of safety. And unfortunately, it's not just in your town, it's in every town.